Let's be honest, the word audit, it can make most people a little nervous, right? You probably picture investigators digging through mountains of paperwork, just looking for one little mistake. But what if I told you that an audit is actually a super structured, almost scientific process, and it's all designed to make sure things are fair and accountable? Well, today, we're going to pull back that curtain and walk through the exact process step by step.
And for this, we're not just winging it. We are going straight to the playbook the pros use. Our guide for all of this is the official Financial Audit Manual from the Auditor General's Department, so you know the information you're getting is the real deal.
So here's the first big thing you gotta know. An audit isn't just a one-time thing. It's actually a continuous loop. It's called the audit cycle. It's a 5-phase process that kicks off with a plan and ends with a follow-up, which, you guessed it, feeds right back into planning for the next one. The whole idea is all about continuous improvement.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to walk through all 5 of these phases. We'll start with creating the blueprint and planning, then get our hands dirty with fieldwork, make sense of it all in evaluation, share what we found in reporting, and finally, close that loop with a super important follow-up. So let's start at the very beginning.
Okay, phase 1, planning. Think about it this way. You'd never build a house without a detailed blueprint, right? Well, you can't conduct a solid audit without a meticulous plan. This is, and you could argue this is the most critical phase, because if the plan is off, everything that comes after is going to be on shaky ground.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. The manual itself puts it perfectly. It says, efficient and effective collection of evidence depends on a clear audit plan. That one sentence says it all. Without a good plan, an audit is just a random search. With one, it becomes a targeted, professional investigation.
And that plan, that blueprint, is incredibly detailed. It's not just the quick checklist. It's a methodical 8-part process. Auditors don't just parachute in. They have to set clear goals, get a deep understanding of the business, and figure out really complex ideas like risk and materiality. And they do all of that before they even look at a single number. Let's pause on that word, materiality, because it is absolutely crucial. Think of it like this. If a huge company's books are off by, say, $5, it's a mistake, but no big deal. But what if they're off by $5 million? Well, that's a material error. It's big enough that it could change an investor's decision to buy or sell stock. So materiality is basically the official line in the sand for what really truly matters in an audit. All right, once that super detailed plan is locked in, it's time for phase 2, fieldwork. This is where the auditors get out of the office and put that blueprint into action. They're on the ground, running their tests, and gathering the actual evidence.
Now, during the fieldwork, auditors are mainly doing 2 different kinds of tests. First, you've got compliance testing. This is all about the process. Are people actually following the rules and controls that are supposed to be in place? Then you've got substantive testing. This one's all about the outcome. Forget the process for a second. Are the final numbers on the page actually correct? This is where they hunt for actual monetary errors.
And auditors can't just collect any old piece of information. The evidence they gather has to meet some really high standards. Of course, it has to be relevant to the audit, reliable, and there has to be enough of it. But most importantly, it's got to be objective and convincing enough to back up their final conclusions, no questions asked.
So, after all that evidence has been carefully collected, we hit phase 3, evaluation. The fieldwork is over. Now it's time to step back, look at everything they found, and start connecting the dots to figure out what story the data is actually telling.
And this isn't guesswork, it's a really systematic process, kind of like a funnel. Auditors start small, at the bottom, drawing conclusions from every single test they ran. Then they zoom out a bit to form conclusions about bigger pieces, like the entire payroll system. And finally, they combine all of that to reach one big, overarching conclusion about the financial statements as a whole.
And what is the ultimate goal here? What are they trying to figure out? Well, it all comes back to that key concept we talked about, materiality. The auditor's entire job boils down to determining, with a very high level of certainty, whether the financial statements are free from material misstatement. That's the benchmark. That is the whole game.
Once that final conclusion has been reached, it is time for phase 4, reporting. This is the moment of truth. All that planning, all that fieldwork, all that evaluation, it now gets boiled down into a formal document that's shared with the organization and, a lot of the time, with the public.
An official audit report isn't just a simple summary. It is a highly structured, very formal document. It has to include all these specific parts, like the objectives and scope, the legal basis for the audit, and, of course, a clear signature and date. This strict format ensures that every single report is professional, consistent, and easy for everyone to understand.
But the entire report really comes down to one crucial thing: the opinion. An unqualified opinion, that's the gold star. That's a clean bill of health. Good news. But a qualified opinion, well, that raises some serious red flags. It basically says, yeah, everything looks pretty good, except for these specific problems we found. This is where an audit's findings have a huge real-world impact.
But hold on, the audit is not over when the report is delivered. And that brings us to the final, and you could argue the most crucial phase, the follow-up. Because a really great audit doesn't just point out problems, it makes sure those problems actually get fixed. This is what truly closes the accountability loop.
And the follow-up process itself is actually pretty straightforward, but it's incredibly powerful. The auditors simply come back at a later date with two simple questions. 1, have the specific errors we found been corrected? And 2, have our bigger recommendations been implemented? This is what accountability really looks like in practice.
And that right there is the key takeaway for this whole thing. The follow-up phase is what transforms an audit from a one-time inspection into a living, breathing cycle. It's the engine that drives continuous improvement, making sure the lessons learned from this audit make the organization stronger for the next one.
So there you have it, a 5-phase cycle that provides a clear, robust process for accountability. But it does leave us with a bigger, more challenging question, doesn't it? What does it actually take to make sure that a report's findings don't just sit on a shelf, but actually lead to meaningful, lasting, real-world reform?